Welcome, everybody. Excited to have you back for another edition of Digital Marketing Wednesday with my pal, Coach Ben Mathis. What's shaking in Raleigh these days, Ben?
Well, we had a heat wave with a monsoon over the weekend, and then it got cool this morning. So I think real fall may be on its way. We're hoping.
Yeah.
Other than that, the real estate market has not cooled off. It is decided to do all of the business that we missed earlier in the year is here now, and looks like it's going to continue. So rocking and rolling as usual.
Good. Well, glad to hear it. Yeah, pumpkin spice lattes and 85-degree weather is what it seems like in most markets. So excited to dive in today. And before we talk about what we're going to cover, also friendly reminder to those of you, in 2 weeks, Tuesday, October 27th, we've got our virtual business planning summit coming up. Free for MEC clients and team members. And if you use promo code MEC2021, MEC2021, guests can get a discounted ticket. So the link is in the original post, and I'll drop it in the comments as well. So we're pumped to see you guys on Tuesday the 27th from 1 to 4 Eastern. So Ben, you and I were preparing for this, and today we're talking about lead conversion and drip campaigns around those things. You're going to get into the difference in branding and lead generation from a marketing perspective. And also you mentioned that you guys are maybe starting to do a little house shopping of your own. And so that's uncovered some interesting stuff and how the consumer interacts with different listings out there. So excited for today's show. Where would you like to start?
Well, let's start with the drip campaigns, because that's a piece that we can talk about, kind of some steps behind it. We don't have to spend a ton of time there. It's just worth revisiting. I'm seeing a lot of people build drip campaigns and things right now. So we start there, and then we'll go into the branding and lead gen conversation. And you're gonna hear us say some things we've said before. And it's just a really good reminder, because right now we're in that season where people are starting to look at their marketing dollars and say, I want to spend this somewhere. So we want to clear up, if you spend it, what expectations do you need to have around it, and what's your intent around it. So we'll talk about that in a little bit too. So the drip campaigns, they are what they sound. They're not real sexy. People don't love talking about drip campaigns. I like them. I love automation. So I love the whole thinking of this is the first domino. So this action happens, and then this is the second domino, the third domino, the fourth domino. Right. And where it gets really interesting is where you have all the variables. So if this happens and they do yes or no, for example, we have a simple variable test. They select no, then we go down this new course. And they select yes, we go on this course. So that's fascinating to me. And I know that a lot of people don't love them. That being said, they are important for your lead conversion. And I think right now we're kind of in this interesting space where people look at these drip campaigns and they kind of have this old view of them, the nurture campaign from back in the day, where It was a generic 12-stop email list that you would send out over 12 months. It's one email per month, and that's a drip campaign. Right. And now they become these fully, I don't want to say fully autonomous, pretty close though. Some of the AI behind it now, that it can actually think through conversations beyond simple if this then that formulas. Although that's the most common that you see right now. We're starting to see behavioral text. So when people interact in a certain way, a certain text is triggered based on their interaction with the previous text, things that we just never saw before. So really, when you think about a drip campaign, the main thing we're thinking through is we're optimizing it for a response, right? Remember the sequence we always talk about. We talk about this in the digital marketing course, but your first job as an agent when you're working with leads is to get a response. And then from there, build rapport, qualification, close, and the next steps. That's kind of the funnel we follow when we're converting these leads. So if we're looking to get a response, the biggest thing that I'm seeing right now is people have started setting up what I call foundational campaigns, Bill. So like the basic buyer and seller campaigns, and they're generic, right? So they ask generic questions, they do generic things, but they're built for anybody who could be a buyer or who could be a seller. And that's great. If you don't have a drip campaign, that's where I suggest you start at. We have templates that we've given out before of the inbound drips that we use for the text and whatnot. So start there if you don't have anything. If you have those, the next layer would be considering to start segmenting them out a little bit. And when I think of segmentation, we start asking questions on the front end of these drip campaigns now that will trigger another drip campaign. And again, we're not going to go granular today, Bill, on like systems to use, the tools that you can do all this with. Sure. We won't nerd out that much. However, it's worth thinking through on your drip campaigns, asking yourself the question, who am I talking to on the other side of the table? because right now it's more about customization than anything. People expect a customized shopping experience. So that's why when they pull Zillow up, one, it remembers their search history. It knows who they are. If they favorited houses, it knows that they have favorited houses. So all of that is building it in that it's a very customized search for them. Same thing on their drip campaigns when they're coming into your world. Are you customizing it, asking them questions and providing information that's relevant to them? A first-time buyer is going to have vastly different questions than a baby boomer who is downsizing their generational home and either moving with family or moving to a different community. So those are two separate conversations. And right now we're saying, hey, are you looking to sell your home? Right? It's different. So we have to start differentiating for those two. Another category we're seeing a lot right now is first-time sellers. You know, the information for a home seller can be customized as a first-time home seller. The millennial group is getting into this category where they bought a lot of houses now, and they're starting to sell those houses, and they've never sold a home before. We had this happen this past week. One of our clients who bought a home with us 2 years ago, they're in this millennial age range, and they're going to go put their house on the market. And they texted us yesterday before their listing appointment today, and they said, is a photographer coming with you today to take the photos? We hadn't even had a listing appointment, and they were planning to put their home on the market next spring, potentially. So they have no clue about that process. So if you're talking to a generational baby boomer who's downsizing versus a first-time home seller, different campaigns should be triggered. So start thinking through that if you have foundational, and then from there move into the further segmentation. So that's the first piece of that. Bill, any thoughts on the additional segments of drip campaigns?
Well, I don't know that I have any new thoughts. I might ask a question, though. Just I'm putting myself in the shoes of the folks who are watching the show today, and I'm imagining that I might not have any of this built out, or I might have just begun doing this, and I'm committed to adding the next layer to it. If you were to say what would be like the first place to start or the second or third place to go if I've already built a little bit of a foundation, what's going to give me my highest impact?
The digital marketing course actually has these plans built out for you. So go in there, rip them off, and use those first, because it's going to shorten out your time horizon on learning how to do all this stuff. So if you're just starting, go get those plans that we have. You can copy and paste them directly into your drip campaigns. Start there. They are foundational. If you have those, then I would suggest looking at, one, the type of leads that you're generating. If you're generating a lot of seller leads, it makes no sense for you to say, well, I'm going to build out a first-time home buyer drip campaign, right? That doesn't make a lot of sense. And vice versa. If you're generating a lot of buyer leads, and when you're talking to them, you're finding them to be first-time home buyers, it makes no sense to build out a generational or baby boomer downsizing your home seller drip campaign. So I would say start with if you have the foundational pieces in place, look at your audience a little bit of what you're generating and say, that's what I need to build to convert them better. So part of this is we're not going out and creating a whole new lead source right now. We're just going to convert better on the leads we already have. And sometimes it's tweaking those dials a little bit. If you're getting a 10 to 15% better conversion rate on the sources you already have, you can exponentially increase your gross commission income, but also your profit on the back end of things, which is what we're always looking at, is that net profit. So to me, it makes a lot of sense to say, what leads do I have? Build out my drip campaigns for that group. And then if I go to generate a different segment audience, first-time home sellers, whatever it may be, build out that drip campaign next.
Yeah. Well, let's dig in on this just a little bit more, because I know you're going to talk about lead conversion and how all these things are connected. And I know one of the things that you and I and Debbie and the rest of the team bump into sometimes when we take on a new client, particularly in the larger teams, is one of the gaps in the business tends to be really, really low conversion on leads. Particularly low conversion on internet leads or digital leads, or however you'd like to refer to them. So what you're discussing obviously is going to help with that. What might be some other things that I could do, or that my team could do, or that you guys do, that I'm thinking more like manual stuff too, that are important in taking that lead conversion from, I would say we typically see it at like 0.5% to 1%. And I know you guys are 7+ on your internet leads, and probably even getting better than that these days. So what are some things I could go do on top of building out these drip campaigns?
Yeah, it's a good question. Bill's trying to get me fired up today, because this is one of my hot buttons. Pick a phone up and call them 10 times. Seriously, that following up with your leads is important. So for us, we've found calling multiple times is helpful. I would wage money, Bill. and I'm not a super high betting person unless you get me in the right mood. I would wager money that if I sat down and went through somebody's CRM who said they were having a conversion problem or the leads were not good, I would almost bet big money that their follow-up processes are subpar at best. And it's not criticizing anyone. It's just something we see over and over. The leads that you're taking on they have to be followed up with at a high level. So calling them first, even though you won't get a super high answer rate, we find that at least establishing that medium with them is a good opportunity to convert them. The next level for us is text. If you guys don't have text, automated text, as well as doing manual text, so your system can do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. However, it's a really good idea to take a video, and if you see somebody looking at a house on 1234 Main Street, literally pick your phone up, shoot a quick video of yourself saying, hey, whatever the lead's name is, just say, hey, Bill, I saw you were looking at 1234 Main Street. I can get an appointment this afternoon. Would you like to go see it? Text that video to them, right? That's a manual piece of work, and it's personalized, it's customized to that person, it's picking up on something that they're looking at. It hits a lot of the right notes so that you could potentially convert that person. So that's the next area I would look at. I would say phone calls first, and I would go to their texting and saying, are they actually utilizing this tool and text? Your highest response rates from text. We're at over 80% responses on text. So people who tell me that the leads are bad, and then we go back and look and they're not texting their leads, I would say that's a big gap. And then the last layer would be setting them up on customized home searches, but also picking out houses that they looked at. So kind of the same thing we do with the video for the text. Go and look at what houses they're browsing, right? And even if they don't have a house, here's a big secret. Just pick one and send it to them and say, what do you like best about this home? And guess what they're going to do? They're either going to say what they like about it or what they don't like about it. One of the two things is going to happen. And then from there, you can have a conversation, because our number one job is to get a response. Too many agents jump right into, my number one job is to sell this person or help them sell their home. First introduction, first time we talk. That's not how this works. There's a process to it. So get a response first, ask good questions, and move on from there. So manually, phone calls, some texts, and personalized, customized emails.
Sure, absolutely. In this conversation now, we're just getting each other worked up in this, and we got another 40-something minutes, so we got some time to run on this for a second. I think often about the analogy of a restaurant. So I came out of the restaurant business prior to this, and it's almost like I think buyer lead follow up is kind of like someone walks into a restaurant, a guest walks into a restaurant, and they sit down at the table, and the waiter or waitress does not go to the table. And they just stand in the kitchen and they complain to the chef that the person in the restaurant doesn't want to eat. And the chef says, well, did you go ask them if they want to eat? And they're like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll go ask them. And then they go to the table and then they say, hey, do you want the prime rib special tonight? And the person sitting at the table says, no, I don't want prime rib special. I'm a vegetarian. And the waiter goes back into the kitchen and tells the chef, oh, they're not even a good patron. They don't even want to eat your prime rib. So there's two components of that we often miss in lead follow-up. And not to be critical, it's just to shine a spotlight on it. One is, are we even getting to them? And number two, are we asking the right questions? And if we just boil it down to those two things, do the work to get to them, ask the right questions, then underpin all of that with this automation that you're talking about, the conversion rate goes through the roof. It's not rocket science. It is effort and skill and the crossroads of those things.
That's it. And it triggered a thought back when I first started, and one of the sales trainings I went to, I remember this sticks to my brain to this day, where they were talking about objections with this. And a lot of times you'll see people say, well, the leads I am getting, they're saying I'm just looking. And the person that was in the training said, you have to take the word just out of that. And here's how you finish that sentence. I'm looking to buy the product that you have. However, I can't make my mind up. Right. And I'm just looking. So I'm not interested, like you said. So asking better questions, taking that word out, going, I'm looking to buy or sell the product that you're offering, the service you're offering. It just changes that mindset a little bit. Like you said, it's follow up and doing some of these manual touches on top of it.
Yeah. Good stuff. All right. Anything else you want to touch on the drip campaigns or the lead conversion piece?
No, text is king. Use text, guys. Survey questions, by the way, work really well. That's something that we've been testing out recently. So asking people a question and then saying, instead of asking them to respond to you, giving them like 3 options, you just hit back 1, 2, or 3. For example, choose one from the list. I want to sell my home. I want to buy first, or I want to invest, right? And then they just text back the number 1, 2, or 3. Those get really good responses because, again, going back to something in the digital marketing course, Bill, friction. less friction for them. I have to hit one number, hit send instead of typing out a response. Makes my life easier. So we've seen those work pretty well recently too. That's a little nugget to plug in if you're doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, nice. While we're on the text thing for just a second, so share with the folks at home the best way, and I know you and I have talked about this before, the best way to get someone from text onto an actual voice-to-voice call for the purposes of closing for appointment, because we know we see much, much higher sticky rate, or less fallout rates, probably a more eloquent way to say that, when we're closing voice-to-voice via text to text. So what's a strategy or two the folks at home could use for that?
For us, after we felt like we built some rapport over text, we'll start asking very specific qualification questions around, do they have an agent? When are they looking to? So location and motivation are big for us. And if we feel like we have those in hand, then we'll start asking more qualification questions, and usually something along the lines of, this is really too much to text to you. Do you have time for a quick 15-minute phone call where we can just discuss this and wrap it up pretty quickly? Typically, they're going to say yes at that point. If we've gone properly through the rapport building steps, they're willing to jump on a phone call. And like you said, we went straight from text to appointments, and the fallout rate, it was like 75% no-shows.
It's huge.
When we get them onto a phone call and actually have a conversation voice to voice with them and run them through the rest of our pre-qual steps, as well as the closing plus next steps, when we follow that sequence out, it jumped to over 65% show rates. So, it was like almost a 40-point swing for us by just getting them onto a phone call. So you may not get as many people to a phone call. However, their show rate is so much better. It's definitely worth it. So for us, it was always, this is too much to text. Do you have time for a quick 15-minute phone call? Most of the times, if you did everything else right, which again, not jumping straight into closing them or asking them about finances, but having the rapport building piece, they would be willing to have a phone call.
Yeah. And the other thing that you did, I just want to point out for everybody that's really smart, is you put a time parameter on your close. And this is the thing we see a lot of people miss, is they'll close for appointment without setting an expectation around timing, which is going to either get us, in this case, ghosted, or get us a yes that's actually really a no. So we see a no-show. Because the biggest fear of the general public is when they talk to a salesperson is that we're going to ankle cuff them to the conference room table and talk at them for an hour. So I love that you're setting time parameters around that close. Okay, so next thing you want to talk about was branding versus lead generation. So lay it on us. What do you think about this?
Yeah. Well, real quick though, I can't believe that that's not part of the strategy. I've always ankle cuffed my people to the table. I do it at their houses too, and that gets a little weird. But we try to do it at the office, And
you show up with your bag of handcuffs, and they're like, "What are we doing here tonight?"
Yeah. This is how we do listing appointments. We're differentiating ourselves now. Seriously. So branding, and that's a good branding exercise, right? I'll put that on my next business card. Anyway, rabbit hole. Branding versus lead generation. So this is a great question that we've been getting a lot recently. People at the end of the year start evaluating their P&Ls. They start looking at numbers, and a lot of the conversations I've had recently is that there is an underspend in the lead gen category. So with extra dollars, or they're allocating more of their budgets to their lead gen side of things. The question has come up between really differentiating between branding and lead generation. And there's a big difference here. And when I get the question of what should I spend my marketing budget on, Bill and Debbie know my favorite response, and this is my response about just about everything. I go, it depends. What's your intent? What are you trying to do? And what I've heard recently is we want to hire this marketing company to do X, Y, and Z for me, build out my brand. And then I ask the question, well, do you expect to get leads from this? Absolutely. If I don't see leads in the next 30 days, I'm going to be really disappointed. And you have to realize oftentimes these companies are branding companies. They will help you build a good brand, and you may get leads from it. However, there's not going to be a direct, hard number of leads that come in based on a branding exercise. So what is branding? Branding is getting your name out there, right? Name recognition. It's a good way to build yourself into a niche. So if you have a niche in your area or a certain community you're targeting, it's not a bad idea to really put some money behind branding. So for example, we would put on, if we're doing Facebook ads, we would not say go in and do a Facebook lead ad for a branding exercise, because it's optimized to capture information, which is the difference between branding and lead gen. It's really meant to help get your name out there. So there are other objectives we would choose, something like a reach, or if you want video views. We're trying to brand ourselves, get people to look at us, recognize our name, recognize our material, whatever it may be. You're just trying to get them familiar with you and your company and your business and whatever else you're trying to put out there. So That's branding in one bucket. Now, the branding does not, again, directly produce leads right away. This is the biggest gap that I see right now, Bill, is people get into this and they go, well, I'm going to spend this amount of money and I'm going to brand and I expect leads to come in within 30 days. Oftentimes it's not going to happen because your intent is to get your name out there, not actually produce leads. So lead gen, the intent is to produce leads. This is where we start talking about what is your CPL, your CPM, your CPC, cost per lead, cost per impressions, and cost per clicks. And the goal is to capture information, connect, and convert. It's a very specific type of goal around this. So, and with lead generation, we have gotten it so dialed in overall, really within the real estate industry at this point, across all verticals, but really inside of real estate, that we have metrics now for what it costs to produce a lead. We know how much. It's very defined. Whereas branding, you can go spend a certain amount of money and there's not really a defined result that's going to come out of it other than this many people saw you. Maybe you increase your follower count. Whereas with lead gen, we know that if we go spend $1,000, we can expect to get, anywhere from 800 to 1,000 leads, depending on what we're targeting, who we're targeting, all that good stuff. Of course, the it depends conversation, but sure. Overall, it's about gathering information, connecting, and converting. Now, the other side of this too is we often hear about marketing budgets spent on outside listing aggregators or syndication companies, spending money on them to produce leads. And I have no problem with that. We talked about it before. I'm okay as long if there's an ROI there that makes sense for your business. I'm not one way or another about it. The biggest thing to pay attention to on that is control. And the way I always think about this, and this is why I'm a fan of having multiple different, we talk about this in the coaching company all the time, having different layers of lead gen pillars in your business. The question I'm always asking is if blank, whatever your main lead gen pillar is, went away today, how would that impact your business and how would you respond to it? Mm-hmm. And we're seeing that across the industry right now. Things are happening that people have experienced this, much like back when MLS first came about. And listings moved from a book to online, and then these portals came about. You saw that shift of power go away from yard signs, right? Because that listing agent used to hold all the power to now all these brokers have this information in control. And then it moved into direct mail marketing, advertising in newspapers, right? So you've seen this shift happen before, and it's happening right now. Over the next several years, we'll see it happen again. So I'm always going to control as well. So whatever you're doing, branding or lead generation, if you're doing it in-house versus buying it from somewhere, pay attention to the control of it. Do you have control of it? Do you have, if it went away, how would it impact your business? So just pay attention to all that when you're looking at this and have the right expectations when you go into it.
Well, you make a really good point there on the control piece and the building multiple pillars or digging multiple wells. And this will be something we'll talk about a little bit more in the business planning summit coming up in a couple of weeks is looking at the ROI and let's, I probably shouldn't name any names. Let's take one of these aggregators as an example. And in your market a while back, they went to a different fee structure there, and it sort of turned into a runaway freight train on expenses. And so there were people, probably still are, who had a big chunk of their business that was devoted to that. And there was a mathematical formula and it made sense, I guess. And then the formula changed and it was beyond their control. And now all of a sudden, this big piece of the business, somebody moved the cheese, and now what do? Well, now we got to go build something else. So as you guys hear us in coaching and on these things and in the business planning summit, talking about building additional pillars to your business, sometimes it's not just like go build it so you can grow more. Sometimes it's go build it so you can play defense against one of these other things changing.
Yeah. Well, it's a good point. And that's one of the reasons why we don't just stick with one type of advertising for us, right? We're diversified enough that, and I tell everybody this all the time, I'm always looking for a good deal. So if I'm sniffing around and like pay-per-click went on sale this year and it's still on sale, yes. I hate even talking about it on this webinar because I don't want people to go buy it right now, but it's on sale. I mean, we were in our area, for example, in Raleigh, cost per click or cost per lead for a seller listing last year at this time was well over $80 a lead, right? And right now, our cost per lead for a seller listing is $8 on pay-per-click. And you got to think about intent. It's different. So we do a lot of Facebook stuff. We do a lot of Instagram now with advertising in the back end. And we'll also go dabble in the pay-per-click arena. And we're not even just looking at Google. We're looking at the other search portals as well. Even though not used as much, the intent of the people who go there, same intent. And they're super cheap. Yeah, like super cheap.
Yeah.
So I'm always thinking about diversification of it, just in case, like Bill is saying, somebody changes things. And it's happened in our market where a lot of these big portals have gone from you pay to play. Now they have picked their partners to a certain extent, and people are getting cut out or feeling the squeeze on it. And neither good or bad on it. It's just something to think about for yourself inside of your business, of whether you're spending your money on branding or lead generation, or maybe you're a heavy prospect, you don't do any marketing, right? Maybe it's time to say, well, if I did some marketing, what does that look like? Or maybe you're so far in the marketing arena that's like, well, do I need to add prospecting in to help convert some more of this? And all those are different conversations we have on all of our coaching calls. And I know we'll talk about that at the business planning clinic as well. But overall, I'm big on how do I control it? And if this goes away, how do I replace it? Or how do I have something else in line that I'm going to go after next? So, and I think in real estate right now, we're kind of in that sea change where you're going to see a lot of these lead sources just change. I don't think they're going to go away. I think it's going to be different. And how different, no one knows yet, because everybody's playing this massive game of chess. And we're just like, we're down at the bottom here, just running around responding to it as we see it. So part of getting around that curve is evaluating your lead sources and saying, what do I truly control? And then even then saying, if that goes away, how do I respond?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and what some of these lead sources have figured out, and this is just an observation, not a criticism, is that most real estate agents are far more likely to pay out a big hefty referral fee than they are to pay a monthly fee on it, because it feels less painful because it's a variable cost, not a fixed cost. And when you start looking at the numbers, that may not make sense. So, just another flag in the ground for ROI analysis there. What else, if anything, you want to talk about on the branding versus lead gen?
Nothing else on my end. I think just know your intent going into it, have the right expectations around it. Nothing bad for either one. Just know the dollars and what you expect to see back on it. Branding is a little bit more loose. It's like nailing jelly to a wall, because how do you really know what did what? You can get some ideas, but not really. Bill was saying ROI. I'm big on looking at ROI on things. So lead gen, you can nail that down a little bit more definitively of I spent X dollars, I got X leads back, I converted those leads at this rate, which equaled this many dollars in closings. There's a little bit more of a formula there for that. So either way you go, just know what you're paying for and what your expectations are on the backside.
Yeah. On the Google thing, real quick, I'll just kind of rewind for a second for the folks who've been following us since we started doing this show back in like late March. It was probably around early or mid-April. Don't quote me on the exact time frame, where you and I had this discussion about what we were reading in the news, and then sort of like the second and third level consequences of that. When Google was saying advertisers are pulling out right now, and we were saying pay-per-click's going to go on sale, and then you started talking about long tails and all this other stuff. So. And that trend is continuing because people are still a little bit uncertain about where they're going to put their chips right now. So good opportunity for those of you who know how to play that game or want to hire us to teach you how to play that game. Okay, so consumer interaction with listings.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
This was interesting. So Laura, my wife, if she's on here spying on me. Hi, Laura.
Hey, Laura, he's working. I promise.
I'm actually doing something today. I'm not sleeping. Seriously, well, she was browsing. We're semi looking at houses right now, just kind of peeking out there and seeing what's out there. So we started looking the other night, and Laura is my guinea pig for all things real estate, in that she knows enough about the business that she's savvy, and at the same time she doesn't know enough to know like all the things that we talk about in terms of like floor plans and 3D and all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting to watch her do a consumer search, and I just sat back and kind of watched what she was doing. So she wanted to see a home. She saw the photos of the professional photos, kind of standard from I did hear her make that remark, this home has professional photos, this one does not. It actually impacted her decision on the house itself. So that was interesting. However, most of the homes have professional photos. It was kind of standard at this point. It wasn't really a perk. And on one particular home, she's like, oh, I really like this house. I like the way it looks, the decorations in it, the layout, blah, blah, blah. And she actually wanted to go schedule a showing on it. So I pull it up on MLS and I'm looking at it, and there's a Matterport link that wasn't advertised anywhere else, just on our MLS. So I click on the Matterport, and she starts using the Matterport and navigating through the house. At first, she didn't love it because she couldn't figure out how to use it. She had never used Matterport before. But pretty soon she was able to figure it out, and quickly she was able to see the layout of the home, the size of the rooms, kind of get a feel for it because you're in the room in that Matterport. It also gave her a sketch of the floor plan. And she was actually able to see from the floor plan that she didn't like the floor plan, and there was no way we could correct it. So it actually saved us time, saved the seller's time, because she actually eliminated going and looking at that house in person, because she was able to not only see the size of the rooms, but also the floor plan. So I was like, well, that's an interesting way to approach it. Now that she actually experienced that, guess what she was looking for on the next listing she looked at? She was looking for a Matterport. Couldn't find one. So what did she find? She found a listing video. And on the listing video, it was a professionally done listing video, really well done. What was interesting to note from her perspective on this, again, she's my guinea pig, so I'm just observing like an anthropologist at this point to see what she does. She's going to kill me later.
But she is right now working on a phrase other than guinea pig. So be ready for that one when you office today.
Take what you can get. But when she was going through the video, what was interesting was that she noted that she couldn't really tell the size of the rooms, because really it was a highlight reel video. And that actually annoyed her a little bit, because it was like, I can't tell if I like this room or not, because it panned pretty quickly. She couldn't see down, like in the Matterport, she could actually stare around the room. So the listing video was nice. It was better than the photo. So again, we took a step up. However, it wasn't really helpful for her to make a decision on whether or not she wanted to actually see that house. So seeing that, it really, first it hit home that I think Matterport is here to stay, or a 3D model. I think virtual reality piece of it's going to stay. I just saw the value, because every listing after that, she actually searched those listings out. And if they had them, she was more likely to look at them than if they didn't have them. So there are certain competitors and brokers out there that they do 3D on everything. So that's something I never really thought was going to stay. And in terms of like, I didn't love 3D. However, seeing the consumer interact with it, I now see that, it's something super helpful for them and for sellers. So I can see how that's important. On the video, what was interesting was we've always talked about doing authentic videos or just doing videos in general. We found another listing she was looking at, and the listing agent used their cell phone and did a walkthrough video of the house. And she actually found that more useful, because not only was the listing agent narrating a lot of the stuff about the house, it wasn't well done in terms of like, they didn't use a gimbal, so it was kind of shaky. The audio was okay, it wasn't great, but we were able to see the entire room. We were able to see the defects in the house. We were able to see everything in the house that she was curious about because of that video. So that was actually more valuable to her than the professionally done video at the end of the day. So my main takeaway from this was, one, thinking through what do consumers now view as standard on listings, right? We go around talking about professional photography a lot as kind of like a bonus. And from what I've seen so far, and from what she told me she saw, it's kind of standard across the board. That's not really a perk anymore. And then the other part that was interesting was, how well do you research your listing before you put it on the market? How much work do you do beforehand? So it was useful when properties had deeds and permits, because one house we're looking at had an addition on it. She was like, so I wonder if they had permits done to this, because they were counting it in the square footage, all this fun stuff you do when you're actually looking to buy a home. And they had not pulled any of that information. So we had to go search it out for ourselves. So then I started getting the perception of, oh, here I am, a buyer doing all this work, right? So I started thinking through the value or the experience that you deliver to the consumer on the other side. What's their perception of what you're doing for them? And everything you do on this side, you can also hand back over on the listing side as part of the value add for why they should work with you as a listing agent as well. Things like neighborhood reports that you can get off of Realist or RPR, having that somewhere for them to access. Having kind of like an info packet or on a single property website put together for the buyer. We found those extremely helpful, actually. Having all this information consolidated into one area about a particular home, it drew us into that home or that property, as well as exploring more homes that agent had on that site, or directed us in other directions on that site. Basically thinking through, what are you doing as an agent to do all this work on the front end to show that to your sellers they should work with you, and then as well as the buyers, that you're actually marketing the home at a very high level, so down the road when they become that repeat business, they come back to you. So that was my takeaway. It was interesting to watch that. I think now there's going to be a different level of standard in terms of what does a consumer expect when they're, one, browsing homes, and then two, when they're selling their home. And that's something I think a lot of people aren't thinking through. So for us, it was professional photography was key. Floor plans and sketches were helpful. 3D Matterport was clutch, because it actually eliminated a lot of the houses. So we didn't waste time going to houses we didn't need to go see. Video walkthroughs were nice, professional was nice, but the actual ones we found more helpful were the amateur ones. The authentic ones we've talked about doing, and then a single property website. That's something we'd always done as a bonus, and I didn't really think much about it. And now when you're on the flip side researching stuff, and a single property website, and I'm talking well done though, having all this information in one spot for you where you don't have to go hunt it yourself, lots of value there and lots of opportunity, because I don't think a ton of agents do all of that as a package right now, because houses are selling so quickly. We don't have to, right? So thinking about the next shift in the market and taking some market share, if you do this stuff, and again, you can systematize all this to be pretty regimented. I think this puts you ahead of the curve a little bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you hit the nail on the head, which I know we got really preachy on a couple of shows ago, which is it's not hard to sell a house right now. It's just not. And so this is not about, do you have to do what Ben just described in order to sell the house? No, of course not. However, all those other benefits, you're winning in head-to-head listing competition, you're generating additional leads, you're building brand power with the things that Ben's describing, all of those. And then at some point in the future, when it becomes a little bit more difficult to sell houses, you're already going to have all of that figured out. So I'm excited about it. And it's kind of fun. Thank you, Laura, for going through that process and letting Ben be an anthropologist, as he said. He's both a historian and an anthropologist. So good stuff there. I was just looking at my notes to see if I had anything else on that. Any other comments you want to make? And then I'll check and see if we have any questions in the live Facebook thread as well while you're wrapping this up.
Yeah. Well, it's just interesting that if you're looking through this and saying, what do we do? What do we not do? It's not, maybe you don't go out and do all of these things, right now. I'm always thinking of what can I add in? Maybe it's one thing. Maybe you're not doing Matterport right now. Go add that in. Or maybe you're not doing video at all right now. Go get your phone and do a simple video. I promise you, people find those more valuable than anything else now. Photos only tell 25 or 30 photos tell part of the story. And I'm promising you this at the moment. If you're not doing it, your competitors are starting to do it. And me seeing Laura use it shows me that, and we talked about this before, Bill, like with Zoom and video in general, it's no longer as an add-on or on the periphery. It's becoming part of the mainstream. Right. And people are getting very comfortable with technology because COVID forced them to get comfortable with technology. And people are now comfortable with figuring out Matterport. People are comfortable with using videos to look through houses. And if you're not offering that service, someone else will, and they will take. And for us, that's what I always think about, is not so much the actual selling of this house. I mean, right now, like you said, it is not hard to sell a house. I mean, certain markets, certain price points, there are more things you have to do, luxury, all that good stuff. If you're in commercials, different ballgame. That's different. Most of the residential resale market right now, it's not super hard to sell a house if you price it correctly and it's in decent condition where someone can, move into it doing minor upgrades or whatever to the home. So for me, it's all about the listing presentation. When I walk into a listing presentation, I know that if I pull out all of these things and say, we do this, this, and this is what it looks like. Here's the benefit to you as a seller because it benefits the buyer in this way. And now that I saw the consumer side of it and how that actually does benefit the buyer, I think that's going to help you win more listing presentations. So right now for us, it's not so much the selling of the listing, it's the getting of more listings. And I'm telling you right now, we haven't, even with our database, we're going on listing appointments that are competitive. Typically right now, when we're going up against FSBOs, we went against a FSBO a couple weeks ago, and they had 5 other agents come in that day that we had to pitch against. We went on a referral from an agent who's retiring, and we're starting to take over their database for them. They gave us a referral, and we went against 6 other agents that they were talking to. And this was someone from their database that they knew personally. And we went against 6 other agents. So now when we're walking in, it's not so much about selling the listing. That's, of course, our goal. It's about winning that listing presentation. So again, if you're not doing this, your competitors are starting to do it. And a lot of these national portals that are coming into different markets right now, they do this as standard. There's a couple of national brokers that do 3D and Matterport as part of every one of their listings. It's standard, and it's just going to keep growing across a long time here as we go along. So if you're not doing it, someone else will. So go ahead and jump on it, or at least pick one of these things and say, I'm going to go add this layer into my business.
Right. Well, and while we got a couple of minutes here left too, I'd like to encourage the folks that have followed us through this whole thread to ask the who question instead of the how or the what question. And so let's play this a little bit further, Ben. If I'm watching this and I'm a super busy agent right now, and I agree with everything that you're saying, and I can't figure out how I'm going to go do all of that, we're just missing a person. Maybe it's a freelance marketer that you pay, per house or something to get started. I know a number of teams that we coach, and we're big fans of this, is bringing marketing in-house once the team grows to a certain level. So you've got a person who does this, and it becomes a system. So this is not necessarily, although it could be, it's not necessarily you and your cell phone on the fly doing it. It could be. Probably going to work out to be a little bit better if you've got somebody else who says, I'll meet you there at 2:00 and you show up with your game face on and I'll handle everything else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Who's the big piece of it. And a lot of this stuff can be ordered through vendors that you work with. So like the 3D, the photography, the sketches, the video walkthroughs even, and then the single property website, you could literally get a VA to do 99% of that for you. And then for you, if it's just doing a video or having someone else do a video for you, that's something else that you can either take on or leverage. So right now, I don't want to say there's an excuse, because there's really not. So if you're thinking about adding some of this stuff in, at least pick one piece of it and say, you know what, I'm going to add this in. Partly for marketing, just so you think about the branding we talked about today in the lead gen. Part of this that we use as our conversion in our drip campaigns to, as Bill says, tie a bow on this whole thing. Oh, got to use a Middletonism today. It's a good day. But
that's
one
that
thing
one off, didn't you?
It's been a while, man. I haven't heard it in a little bit. I pulled it out of the archives. Right. But looking at this whole thing, you can use these pieces that you're doing for your listings as part of your branding, your advertising, as well as your conversion for your drip campaign. So if you have sellers coming in, it's a great thing to send them a link to a 3D Matterport video of a home that you do, and then explain to them in that email or in a text that you send them and say, hey, here's something we do so that you don't have to have a bunch of people walking through your house. They'll be able to see your home without having to walk through it. This is just one of the pieces of value that we add. If you want to know more, let's talk about it. So you can use all this. Again, I'm always thinking like layers in a cake here. You can layer all this stuff in through your whole business. So if you start adding pieces in, use it on your listing presentations, use it on your branding and advertising, use it in your conversion cycles with your drip campaigns as well. It all feeds in. So don't look at this as, oh, I have to go add this extra thing in now for extra work. And that's all it's going to do is, I just use it for my listing presentations. You can use it all across the board to show value to people who may not know you yet, your haven't met audience, or even some of your warm met audience. It's a great tool across all different sides. So if you're going to add pieces in, remember to layer it into your advertising, your branding, and your conversion as well, so that you can convert more leads.
Yeah. Great stuff. All right. Anything else you want to share with them today before we wrap up?
That's it on my end.
Awesome. Nice work as always. Thanks for joining us, guys. We'll see you at the Business Planning Summit Tuesday, October 27th, 1 to 4 Eastern. Link to register in the comments. Catch you next time.
Bye, guys.